Okay, before we get into episode 19, quick housekeeping, because I know people are confused. First, Transit Love 4 is officially 21 episodes, not 22, and the final episode airs January 21st. So we're much closer to the end than it feels, which also makes this the longest season in the show's history. Online, there's already a widely accepted final couple lineup. Yushik and Hi Yanji, Beck Hyun and Yunyong, Woojin and Jiyeon, and Wonkyuk and Jihyun. On paper, it looks neat. 2 reunions, 2 switches, everyone paired off, roll credits. But once you actually sit down and watch episode 19 carefully, reaction by reaction, silence by silence, that clean ending starts to fall apart. This episode isn't filler. It's where the cracks become impossible to ignore. Not because secrets are exposed, but because consistency is. Who stays steady under pressure, who starts talking in circles, and who suddenly becomes poetic when it's convenient. The truth game wasn't about answers. It was about who could survive being asked directly. And honestly, watching this episode was a ride. There wasn't a single boring scene. Even the lighter moments carried emotional weight, and the funniest date of the episode turned out to be one of the saddest if you look closely. Yunyong and Beck Hyun's water date had me laughing non-stop. Yunyong panicking, confused, half terrified and half determined, was genuinely hilarious. On the surface, they bonded more. There were sparks. But here's the thing, that spark was one-sided. Yunyong was fully invested. Beck Hyun only thinks he is. He enjoys the comfort, the attention, and the stability she gives him, but his heart keeps drifting elsewhere, and episode 19 made that painfully obvious. Hi guys, it's your girl Funnel Pop. Make sure you watch this video till the very end to catch every little detail that unraveled in this episode, and to see why some endgame outcomes that seem obvious might not be that simple after all. If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. You could see Yunyong's realization creeping in. Beck Hyun is a walking plot twist. On paper, his date with Yunyong looked stable. Cute even. A water date that screams, we're safe. But then the truth game happens, and his brain turns into a slideshow of Hi Yanji's face. Yunyong notices immediately. She hugs herself, literally comforting herself as she watches Beck Hyun like it's a horror movie. She watches his eyes, and you can see her bracing for impact. When she asks him if he would have been shaken if Hi Yanji approached him earlier, and he says yes, not softly, not conditionally, just yes. That was a relationship funeral. Because what he really implied was, I'm here because that other door didn't open. That was a breakup sentence for Yunyong. But the way Yunyong structured it, it felt like she had already accepted in her mind that Beck Hyun and Hi Yanji missed their chance. The problem is, Beck Hyun very clearly hadn't. And the bracelet detail matters. The bracelet he never takes off, the one he wore even before dating Hi Yanji years ago, is now sitting on Yunyong's wrist. Hi Yanji noticed it. And if she's truly over Beck Hyun, why did that still sting? Why was there jealousy at all? That alone tells you Beck Hyun is not a closed chapter for her. Based on this episode alone, Beck Hyun and Yunyong don't feel like an endgame couple. They feel like a safe stop that Beck Hyun emotionally checks out from the moment his past reappears. Now let's talk about Hi Yanji, because episode 19 quietly shifts her entire arc. Before this episode, I genuinely believed Hi Yanji might never find out that Beck Hyun made the curry for her when she first entered the house. The editors even wrote on screen back then that she never found out. The phrasing felt permanent, like it would never come to light. And then episode 19 happens, and Beck Hyun casually brings it up. That is huge. That changes everything. Because Hi Yanji entered this show believing Beck Hyun had no interest in reconciliation, no lingering feelings, no care. Now she learns that from the very beginning, he was quietly showing interest in the only way he knows how, through subtle actions instead of words. That alone reopens a door she thought was sealed shut, and it becomes very hard to believe her heart is done with him. So for Beck Hyun's story, whether people like it or not, Hi Yanji still feels like a live option, not a closed chapter. Which brings us back to Hi Yanji's position. Between Yushik's ambiguity and Beck Hyun's delayed clarity, she's standing at a crossroads. Yushik makes her feel comfortable but uncertain. Beck Hyun makes her feel shaken but seen. At the same time, her confusion with Yushik deepens. When Song-young asks if her feelings have changed, she says, "I don't know about the final choice, but emotionally nothing has changed." That's not vague. That's her trying to be honest without fully committing on camera. Meaning she's still emotionally parked in Yushik's lane, she's just scared to say it outright based on the rules. Then she turns around and asks Yushik if he's ever clearly expressed his feelings to the person he likes, and he says no. I don't think Yushik meant he doesn't like her. I think he meant he's never verbally said, "I choose you." But Hi Yanji didn't hear it that way. What she heard was, "Maybe I'm not the only one he's interested in." And that single answer planted doubt. And right there is the entire Hi Yanji-Yushik problem in one exchange. She wants certainty. He wants plausible deniability. He'll hold your hand, look at you like a husband, smile softly, do all the actions, but the second you ask, "So what are we?" he turns into a philosophy professor, ha ha ha. And Yushik's evasiveness wouldn't be as frustrating if he was consistent, but he's not. He avoids commitment the way people avoid free trials they know they'll forget to cancel. Every answer is designed to leave at least one door open. Add this to the marriage conversation. And let's clear this up properly, because international viewers got done dirty here. During Minkyong and Hi Yanji's chat in the bathroom, Minkyong whispered "Bihan," which means no marriage, but the translation said celibate. Being celibate means choosing not to engage in sexual activity, often as a long-term lifestyle choice. Which isn't what Minkyong was trying to say. She never said Yushik doesn't want sex, she's saying he doesn't prioritize marriage. That changes everything. Because now this isn't about vibes anymore, it's about future alignment. Hi Yanji now knows that choosing Yushik means postponing or potentially abandoning something she takes seriously. Yushik does warmth, comfort, and soft energy very well. What he does not do is long-term clarity. And you could see Hi Yanji processing that in real time during the truth game. Her silence after his answers said more than anything he actually said. That's the real language of this episode, not dialogue. So when she clings to him later that night, curling up to Yushik like a puppy in love, ha ha ha. I see seduction, I see affection, and I see strategy. She's trying to secure his feelings before he has room to hesitate. It works, to a degree. You can see it all over Yushik's face. But even then, he remains controlled, telling her to go to bed, refusing to fully linger. That's Yushik in a nutshell. Warm, attentive, loving, but never fully stepping forward. And then Minkyong enters the picture, and honestly, I don't understand why people villainize her for asking the questions she asked. Of course she asked Hi Yanji what was bothering her, and preventing her from deciding on her final choice. Of course she brought it up. Minkyong's question created a quiet vacuum and a major crack into whatever Hi Yanji and Yushik had going on because of how Hi Yanji responded. From Minkyong's point of view, that's mission accomplished. This is a woman fighting for her last possible chance with the person she loved for 8 years. Any normal human being would do the same. And the truth game forces Yushik into something he's been avoiding all season. When Minkyong asks him about the future he imagined with her, he finally speaks in full sentences. Long ones. Honest-sounding ones. He says he never imagined a future without her and that he always wanted to make her happy. Part of me does read this as performative, not fake, but image-aware in front of the other members. Like he's trying to show everyone that just because he's openly expressing feelings toward Hi Yanji now doesn't mean he was careless or unloving toward Minkyong before. But even if that's the case, the content of what he chose to say still matters. He's never spoken with that level of certainty about Hi Yanji, not before, not after, not privately, not publicly, at least from what the edits have shown us. And if this were just about saving face, logic says he would have balanced it out later with reassurance or clarification to Hi Yanji, which never happens. So regardless of intent, Hi Yanji doesn't experience that moment as performance, she experiences it as information. She sees that Yushik can speak clearly when forced, and when he does, the person he speaks about with certainty is Minkyong. That moment alone shifts the power dynamic and reinforces that Yushik's emotional anchor still sits with Minkyong, even if he's exhausted by the relationship. And because of that, my prediction for Yushik's story is that if he chooses anyone at the end, it will be Minkyong. If he doesn't, he risks choosing Hi Yanji and being rejected, which would send him home alone. Which brings me back to Hi Yanji and Beck Hyun. If Beck Hyun truly opens up in the next episode, if he clearly tells her he wants her back and explains his actions, I believe her heart will move. The curry food revelation, the lingering jealousy after seeing Yunyong wearing his bracelet even after all this time, the eye contact, the history, and the directness Beck Hyun is capable of when it counts, all point in one direction. And guys, this is where I've stayed consistent from the beginning of this show. Despite all the spoilers, despite all the noise, I do not believe Hi Yanji and Yushik are the final couple. Even that infamous photo people keep referencing as their final choice moment has now given me more reason to doubt the rumors. One key thing to note is that this photo of Yushik and Hi Yanji was taken during the day. Final decisions on this show, especially for a major couple like them, are almost always filmed at night. To me, that photo suggests hesitation, and not confirmation. So my prediction for Hi Yanji's story as of episode 19, is that she ultimately chooses Beck Hyun, not Yushik. This opinion of mine of course can change if the storyline shifts in the next episode. Yushik and Hi Yanji's connection collapsed in this episode, and it didn't collapse because they lacked feelings. They weakened because they failed the pressure test. And that is a major shift. I don't think they're done emotionally, but they're cracked in a way that matters. They had a fiery date earlier in the day, but by night everything felt different. When they returned to the lodge, after the truth or dare, Yushik was walking ahead of her, not beside her. In the elevator, they weren't standing close the way they usually do. The distance was subtle, but it was there. He softened again when Hi Yanji moved closer, and he clearly enjoyed it, but something had already changed. The connection was still there, but it wasn't the same. This could be why the camera kept turning the cast upside down and shooting at odd angles during the truth game, almost like the show was quietly signaling that every connection in the house was about to be shaken and reoriented. Now, Wonkyoo and Jihyun are interesting because they feel like a reunion that makes sense, but not one that feels fully secure. Wonkyoo clearly came on the show to mend things. He's put in the effort, and Jihyun sees it. But there's still a sense that her heart isn't completely settled. That might explain why she was able to open up to Jaehyung so naturally on their date, even though the show is nearing its end. That's why, to me, Jihyun is the only person this season capable of delivering a true last-minute shock. If she chooses Jaehyung, it would make emotional sense, even if it's unexpected. Her actions and expressions sometimes suggest that she hasn't fully forgiven Wonkyoo. I get a similar feeling from her toward Wonkyoo as I do between Hi Yanji and Songyoung. This also helps explain why she seemed on the verge of tears when Wonkyoo asked her why she liked Yushik, and she answered that it was because he is kind, and places others first before himself. She also appeared affected by Wonkyoo's reaction when Jihyun asked him when his heart fluttered the most during their dates. Jihyun later commented in her interview that she felt he was becoming too invested and overly honest at that moment. Could that influence her final choice? She believed she was deeply hurt by Wonkyoo during their relationship, so if she recognizes consistent kindness and emotional safety in Jaehyung, there is a real possibility she could switch. That said, based on consistency and effort, my prediction remains that Ji-hyun chooses Won-kyu, with the caveat that she is the contestant most likely to flip the table at the very last second. And that prediction holds only if Jae-hyung does not clearly express to Yunyong that he wants her back, even up until the end. He has never denied liking Yunyong, and he has never denied wanting her back. He simply chose to give her space because he saw that she was interested in someone else, and he did not want to be the person who disrupted what she was building. Especially given their history, Yunyong once believed he hated her for moving on. I think Jae-hyung is holding back his true feelings because he does not want Yunyong to resent him again. He wants her to come to him freely, communicate with him openly, and rebuild some form of friendship first. You can see it in how excited he was when Yunyong came to his room to ask if they should wear matching outfits for their official ex-couple date. He looked at her with pure affection. He even mentioned that the denim outfit he brought on the show had never been worn because he was saving it specifically for that date. That detail alone says everything. How sweet is that? Ji-yeon and Woojin feel more straightforward. Woojin's jealousy coming out after finding out about the t-shirt incident was so fun to watch. My guy is deeply invested in his ex lol. Ji-yeon seems calmer now, and I really like how conscientious she's been with Ji-hyun. I hope they work, but Woojin's tendency to react emotionally could become an issue long-term. Still, based on what we've seen so far, my prediction is that Ji-yeon and Woojin end up choosing each other. As for Sung-young, I honestly don't see a viable path forward for him. It feels like there's too much hurt, too much unresolved damage on Hi Yanji, and Hi Yanji has other options that feel emotionally safer. Compared to Beck Hyun, Sung-young just doesn't stand a chance in this narrative. So if you step back and look at episode 19 without forcing a neat ending onto it, what you see is a season where chemistry keeps losing to clarity, and clarity is still rare. Some people are moving forward. Some people are stuck. And some people are about to realize, a little too late, that avoiding answers is also an answer.